Welcome to British Focus, your go-to channel for the latest political debates and breaking news from across the UK. If you're passionate about understanding the real issues shaping Britain today, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for daily updates. One of the most pressing issues in the country right now is illegal immigration, a topic that sparks fierce debate across political lines. Different parties propose different solutions, but one thing is clear: Labour's approach is failing. The current government claims to be following international conventions, but in reality, their interpretation is flawed. While policies should be clear and effective, we see a chaotic system where the UK takes action, only for France to reassess and slow the process down. The facts speak for themselves. Over 500,000 asylum seekers have arrived in the UK in the past decade, and yet, instead of securing our borders, politicians continue to debate rather than act. In today's video, we'll break down a heated discussion where Richard Tice takes on Labour and the entire panel. Stay tuned. Britain's economy is in free fall, and yet Keir Starmer would rather pretend everything is fine than face the truth. Businesses are shutting down, families are struggling to make ends meet, and jobs are disappearing at an alarming rate. And what's his response? More taxes, more reckless spending, and absolutely no plan for growth. It's as if he's actively trying to drive the country into the ground. But here's the thing: he doesn't want you to realize just how bad things are. He's hoping you'll ignore the rising costs, the failing businesses, and the spiraling national debt. Let's talk about the brutal reality that Starmer is desperate to keep hidden. Small businesses, the backbone of our economy, are being crushed under the weight of excessive taxation. With a £25 billion increase in national insurance, many of them simply can't survive. Experts warn that up to 100,000 jobs could be wiped out as a direct result of these policies. That's not just a number. It's 100,000 families suddenly left without a source of income. And for what? Because Labour refuses to acknowledge basic economic principles? Because Starmer thinks he can spend his way out of a crisis without any real strategy? And let's not forget about the national debt. It's spiralling out of control. Yet Starmer continues to throw money around like confetti. He's increased spending by £70 billion, and yet, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility, the economy is projected to grow at the same sluggish rate as before. That's billions of pounds spent with no tangible results, just more debt, more financial instability, and no actual plan to fix anything. So, where is all that money going? If it's not stimulating growth, if it's not creating jobs, then who exactly is benefiting from this reckless spending? Certainly not hard-working Britons. What's even more frustrating is how Starmer and his allies try to gaslight the public into believing things aren't as bad as they seem. He cherry-picks statistics, boasts about isolated, meaningless successes, and completely ignores the bigger picture. He talks about growth, but fails to mention that businesses are suffocating under his policies. He wants you to believe his plan is working, when in reality, it's leading us straight into economic ruin. And here's the most dangerous part: he knows this. He knows that if people wake up to the economic disaster unfolding under his leadership, his days in power are numbered. That's why he's not focusing on fixing the economy. He's focused on rigging the next election to make sure he doesn't lose. Instead of tackling the crisis he created, he's doing everything he can to manipulate the system in his favor. First, he wants to scrap voter ID laws. These laws were introduced to prevent voter fraud and ensure fair elections. So why is Starmer so eager to get rid of them? The answer is obvious: because he knows he needs every possible advantage to hold on to power. Other European nations require ID to vote, yet Starmer wants to buck this trend. Why? Because making elections less secure benefits him and his party. But that's just the start. Starmer's Labour is also considering granting voting rights to foreign nationals, millions of people who aren't British citizens potentially influencing the outcome of our elections. Think about that for a second. The right to vote is one of the most fundamental aspects of democracy, yet Labour is willing to hand it out to people who have no real stake in Britain's future. Why? Because they know it will help them stay in power. And then we have the most disturbing rumour of all: Starmer is considering cancelling local elections in areas where Labour is losing ground. Let that sink in. When faced with the possibility of losing, he's not working to win back voters by improving his policies. He's looking for ways to shut down democracy itself. Nigel Farage has already warned that Labour's attempts to reorganise local government could mean postponing or even cancelling elections in key areas. If true, this is nothing short of an attack on democracy. Starmer is playing a dangerous game. Instead of winning votes by running the country well, he's trying to change the rules to ensure Labour stays in power regardless of the public's opinion. This isn't just political manoeuvring, it's blatant election rigging. Every single move he's making, from scrapping voter ID to potentially cancelling elections, is designed to tip the scales in his favour, not to improve the lives of British citizens. Think about it. If Starmer were confident in his leadership, if he truly believed his economic policies were working, would he need to resort to these desperate tactics? No. A strong leader wins elections by delivering results. A weak, desperate one tries to manipulate the system to cling to power. This is why we must expose what's happening. The British people deserve to know the truth. Our economy is crumbling, businesses are suffering, and Labour's only concern is maintaining control. They're not working for us. They're working for themselves. And if Starmer is willing to manipulate the electoral system now, what's next? What else is he prepared to do to tighten his grip on power? First, it's scrapping voter ID, then it's letting foreign nationals vote, then it's cancelling elections altogether. Where does it stop? At what point do we wake up and realise we're being played? Britain deserves better than this. We deserve leaders who prioritise economic stability over political survival. Leaders who don't resort to shady tactics to stay in power. Leaders who are willing to take responsibility for their failures and work to fix them, instead of pretending they don't exist. Starmer has proven time and again that he is not that leader. His economic policies are a disaster, his response to criticism is to suppress opposition, and his solution to falling public support is to rewrite the rules of democracy. He's not leading the country, he's hijacking it. And the sooner people wake up to that fact, the better. The question now is, will we let him get away with it? Or will we hold him accountable before it's too late? Keir Starmer promised to fix the NHS. He stood in front of the cameras, made grand speeches, and assured the British people that under his leadership, our healthcare system would be transformed. But let's be honest, has anything changed? No. In fact, things have only gotten worse. Billions have been poured into the NHS, yet waiting times remain sky-high, doctors and nurses are overworked, and patients are left in limbo for months, sometimes even years, just to get the treatment they desperately need. And the real question is, where is all that money going? Because it certainly isn't improving healthcare. The latest report from the Public Accounts Committee exposes the brutal reality. NHS England is failing, and those in charge are either delusional or incompetent. They keep making overly optimistic claims about progress while the system collapses around them. It's like watching a sinking ship while the captain insists everything is fine. The truth is, the NHS is being run into the ground by bureaucrats who have no idea what they're doing. They're blocking essential reforms, wasting resources, and standing in the way of real change. And what is Starmer doing about it? Absolutely nothing. He's standing by, watching it happen, and pretending the problem doesn't exist. Let's talk about technology. In 2024, you'd expect a modern healthcare system to have up-to-date digital infrastructure, right? Well, not in Starmer's NHS. Hospitals are still operating with outdated systems, and digital transformation is moving at a snail's pace. Some facilities are still using technology from the 90s. How is that acceptable in a country like Britain? How are we supposed to believe Starmer is serious about fixing the NHS when he can't even modernize basic systems? This level of incompetence is not just frustrating, it's dangerous. And let's not forget the NHS staff, hard-working doctors, nurses, and paramedics who are being pushed to their limits. They are underpaid, overworked, and constantly being told to do more with less. Morale is at an all-time low, and it's no surprise that so many healthcare workers are either leaving the profession or moving abroad for better opportunities. But what does Starmer do? He throws more money at the problem without addressing the root causes. This isn't leadership, it's reckless mismanagement. But perhaps the biggest insult of all is Starmer's complete lack of urgency. The NHS is in crisis, yet he behaves as if there's no problem. The government drags its feet, commissions reports, makes vague promises, and nothing actually gets done. Meanwhile, Ordinary people suffer. Families are forced to wait endlessly for critical treatments, patients are being neglected, and the system is crumbling before our eyes. And what does Starmer do? He blames everyone but himself. And while the NHS falls apart, Starmer has been busy plotting something else, undoing Brexit. Remember when he promised to respect the will of the people? When he stood there and swore he wouldn't take us back into the European Union? Well, surprise, surprise, he lied. Leaked reports have revealed that Starmer is actively working to bring Britain back under Brussels control. He's looking at agreements that would tie us to EU regulations, effectively reversing the hard-fought independence that Brexit was meant to secure. And the worst part? He's trying to do it quietly, hoping that the British people won't notice. He knows that if he came out and admitted what he's really doing, there would be outrage. So instead, he's creeping back towards EU alignment bit by bit, selling it as economic cooperation, while in reality, he's dragging us back into the very system we voted to leave. First, it was talk of a new customs arrangement, one that conveniently looks exactly like the EU's customs union but with a different name. Then, there's the so-called Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention, which sounds technical but in reality, means entangling ourselves in EU trade rules once again. One step at a time, Starmer is trying to undo Brexit without ever saying the words out loud. Let's be clear, this isn't about what's best for Britain. It's about Starmer and his political allies desperately trying to appease Brussels. They've never truly accepted Brexit. They've spent years trying to undermine it, and now they see their opportunity. But the British people didn't vote for a half Brexit. We didn't vote for a leader who would slowly hand back control to the EU while pretending otherwise. And the hypocrisy is staggering. Starmer claims that these new agreements will help British businesses, yet he was one of the biggest voices pushing for regulations that strangled our economy in the first place. He talks about boosting growth, yet his policies are suffocating the very businesses that drive our economy. The same man who wants us back under EU regulations is the one crushing our industries with high taxes and burdensome red tape. So why should we trust him now? Priti Patel has called it out for what it is, an insult to the British people. We voted to take back control, yet Starmer is trying to sell us back to Brussels under a different name. It's undemocratic, dishonest, and entirely self-serving. And here's the reality, this isn't just about politics. It's about our sovereignty, our independence, and our ability to govern ourselves. Rejoining EU structures means surrendering control over our trade, our laws, and our future. It means giving Brussels a say in how we run our country, something the British people rejected in 2016. So why is Starmer so desperate to reverse Brexit? Because he never believed in it in the first place. He campaigned for Remain. Then, after the vote, he pretended to respect the result while secretly pushing for a second referendum. Now, he's using backdoor tactics to realign Britain with the EU, hoping that we won't see what he's doing until it's too late. But we do see it. We see what's happening to the NHS. We see the deception surrounding Brexit. We see the economic destruction being inflicted on Britain. And we see a Prime Minister who is more concerned with maintaining power than with doing what's right for the country. The question now is, how much longer are we going to let him get away with it? Because the longer Starmer stays in power, the more damage he will do. Whether it's our healthcare system, our economy, or our independence, he is leading Britain down a dangerous path. And if we don't hold him accountable now, we may not get another chance. Keir Starmer promised stability, unity, and a strong, competent Labour Party. Yet, here we are, watching his leadership unravel in real time. His party is crumbling from the inside, his MPs are turning against him, and his policies are a mess. Labour is in complete disarray, and Starmer is losing his grip faster than he can spin the narrative. The cracks are showing, and even his own allies are starting to realise that his leadership is nothing more than a house of cards, one that is about to come crashing down. The divisions within Labour are growing by the day. Prominent figures within the party are openly questioning Starmer's direction, particularly when it comes to the economy and national security. His failure to take a firm stance on military spending has caused major backlash among his own MPs, who fear that his indecisiveness is jeopardizing Britain's special relationship with the United States. In a world that is becoming increasingly unstable, Britain needs strong leadership, yet Starmer dithers, delays, and avoids making the tough decisions. His refusal to commit to increasing defence spending until after 2030 has angered both Labour and Tory MPs alike. The message it sends is clear: under Starmer, Britain is weaker. And then there's Ed Miliband, the ghost of Labour's past, who is now wreaking havoc on its present. Miliband is pushing for an extreme green agenda that threatens to destroy Britain's energy industry. He wants to block new oil and gas licenses, effectively shutting down critical energy projects like the Jackdaw and Rosebank fields, projects that could help Britain become energy independent. But Miliband isn't interested in energy security. He's obsessed with unrealistic net zero policies that will cripple industries, drive up energy costs, and send British investment fleeing to more business-friendly countries. And Starmer. He's caught in the middle, too weak to stand up to Miliband and too afraid to alienate the party's pro-business wing. He's trying to please everyone, but in doing so, he's pleasing no one. This internal chaos is a clear sign of weak leadership. A strong leader would take control, make firm decisions, and unify the party around a clear vision. But Starmer isn't a strong leader. He's a career politician who bends with the wind, saying whatever he thinks will keep him in power. And the infighting is only getting worse. Some Labour MPs are whispering about a leadership challenge, while others are simply losing faith that Starmer has what it takes to win a general election. He was supposed to be Labour's great hope, but now, even his own party is questioning whether he's up for the job. And how does Starmer respond to criticism? Does he listen, reflect, and adjust his policies? No. Instead, he does what all weak leaders do: he tries to silence the opposition. He knows his leadership is being questioned, so rather than winning support through competence, he's looking for ways to suppress dissent. His latest moves include pushing reforms that would limit public participation in planning decisions and introducing harsher restrictions on protests. It's clear what he's trying to do: eliminate any resistance to his policies and consolidate his power. This is deeply troubling. A government that fears its own people is a government that is failing. Instead of addressing the root causes of public frustration, like the failing economy, the broken NHS, and the betrayal of Brexit, Starmer is focusing on shutting down opposition. That should alarm every single person in this country. Labour claims to be the party of democracy and fairness, yet under Starmer, they're actively working to suppress free speech and limit public involvement in decision-making. And let's not forget Labour's broader attempt to manipulate the electoral system to its advantage. We've already seen Starmer's push to scrap voter ID laws, a move that would make it easier to commit voter fraud. We've seen the discussions about allowing foreign nationals to vote, a blatant attempt to expand Labour's voter base at the expense of British democracy. And now, with Labour considering the reorganisation of local government, there are even concerns that they could suspend elections in areas where they are losing ground. It's shameless, it's undemocratic, and it proves that Starmer's top priority isn't fixing Britain. It's securing power by any means necessary. But here's the thing: no amount of election rigging can save Starmer from his own failures. With each passing scandal, more and more people are losing faith in him. Recent polls show that 65% of voters no longer trust Labour's ability to govern effectively. That's a staggering number. When the majority of the country believes you're incompetent, it's only a matter of time before your downfall begins. And even within his own party, the pressure is mounting. Some Labour MPs are quietly considering defecting if Starmer doesn't call an election soon. Others are openly expressing their dissatisfaction with his leadership. This is a party on the verge of implosion. Remember, Starmer was supposed to unite Labour after the Corbyn years. Instead, he's created a new era of division, uncertainty, and internal rebellion. At this rate, it's not a matter of if Starmer falls, it's a matter of when. His economic policies are a disaster. His NHS strategy is non-existent. His Brexit stance is a betrayal. His leadership is weak. And now, with his party fracturing and the public turning against him, his grip on power is slipping. The only question left is, will he step down voluntarily, or will he be forced out? Because make no mistake, his castle of lies is collapsing. He's spent years spinning a false narrative, pretending to be a competent leader while making blunder after blunder. But the British people aren't blind. They see what's happening. They see the economic struggles, the NHS crisis, the erosion of democracy. And they are not buying into Starmer's deception any longer. The reality is this: Britain deserves better. We deserve a leader who isn't afraid to face challenges head-on. We deserve a government that respects democracy instead of trying to manipulate it. We deserve policies that actually improve lives, not empty promises that lead to deeper crisis. The longer Starmer stays in power, the more damage he will do. He will continue to weaken our economy, undermine our independence, and erode our democratic institutions. That's not leadership, that's a disaster in the making. So, the real question now is, how much longer will we allow this to continue? How much longer will we watch Britain decline under Starmer's failed leadership? The cracks are widening, the pressure is mounting, and soon, something is going to give. The only thing left to see is whether Starmer falls before he drags the entire country down with him.